Oh, good morning. How many of you have ever seen a horror movie? Here are rules that I learned from watching horror movies. As a general rule, don't solve puzzles that open portals to hell. Never read a book of satanic chants aloud, even as a joke. If your car seems to run out of gasoline at night on a lonely road near a deserted house, and your gas gauge says you still have half a tank, prepare to die or be eaten. If you're searching for something that caused a loud noise and find out that it's just the cat, get out of the house now. If appliances start operating by themselves, do not check for short circuits. Get out of the house now. When you have strength in numbers, never, ever split up to search the house, and never, ever volunteer to search the basement. If your companions suddenly begin to exhibit uncharacteristic behaviors such as hissing, fascination with blood, glowing eyes, increasing hairiness, and so on, kill them immediately. If your children speak to you in someone else's voice, in Latin or any other language that they should not know, kill them immediately. However, it'll probably take several rounds, so make sure you've got enough. And finally, don't fool with recombinant DNA technology unless you really know what you're doing. Now, of course, horror movies speak to our fears, and a lot of the archetypes in horror movies as well. We all have the opportunity to come from love or to come from fear in any situation. And yet, even if we know that mentally, there are times where we just can't help to go to fear, when things aren't unfolding according to our preferences. There are three things that people have been praying for the millennia, and that is for healing, prosperity, and human relationships. Those are the three most common requests we get at Silent Unity, our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week prayer room. And like we say each week, the contact information is on the back of your bulletin at the very bottom there. You can call, you can go to the website, you get the YouPray app on your phone or tablet. Unity believes that prayer works. And Unity also approaches the Bible recognizing that all of the narrative stories in there are rich with symbolism. It's interesting when you look in the four Gospels, Jesus' parables, that he would teach by telling these stories. Half of his parables have to relate to prosperity, making sure that we've got enough, to pay our bills in full and on time. I wanted to share with you a Bible story that you don't hear that often because, well, let's see how you react to this. It's from the Gospel of Matthew, 20th chapter, 1st verse. And Jesus says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out at 6 a.m. to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for 12 hours of work at the usual daily wage, he sent them into the vineyard. The landowner once again went out about 9 o'clock. He saw others standing idle in the marketplace and said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' He went out again about noon, and 3 o'clock, said the same thing to workers there. And then about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around and said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' And they said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' And the landowner said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When the evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came to be paid, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked for only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But the landowner replied to them, saying, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give this to the last, the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me?' Or are you envious because I am generous? So what do you think? Doesn't sound fair, does it? You notice the title of my talk today is, Does God Play Fair? And my other reactions I had is like, well, first of all, of course, 12 hours of work per day. This is long before the union movement and an 8-hour day and a 40-day week. Also, you start to think this landowner must be an idiot if he's going to go out at 6 o'clock tomorrow and try to hire workers, right? But wait a minute here. This is a parable taught by Jesus Christ. And what I believe is that this parable talks about how prosperity works in our lives. Our unity movement was started by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Myrtle used to call prosperity, her definition was all sufficiency in all things with plenty to spare and to share. Prosperity is a divine idea. We know that divine ideas are there in the divine mind, and if we open our mind to the divine minds, get ideas that we can use to express in the world. We just first of all need to believe that divine ideas exist and then be willing to express them. So, prosperity is available to anybody at any time. But then why doesn't it always seem to be appearing to everyone at any time? Well, all characters in the Bible represent some aspect of us. So the landowner, the workers, they all represent some aspect of ourselves. So, the landowner actually represents this divine idea of prosperity and how it works, that it is available. The vineyard fields represent fields of activity in our lives. And whenever you see in the Bible them talk about fields or farming like that, like, for example, one point Jesus says, look out over those fields. They may appear empty to you, but I see them white for the harvest. That they all represent fields of activity. In other words, whatever we do to go out there, and do what it is we need to do. Now, the work represents both physical work and prayer work. We have inner work and outer work to do. Now, there are two ways to have prosperity come into our lives. The first is, of course, to earn it by working for it. And then the second one is to pray for it and attract it. Now, it may seem like praying it and attracting it is easier, but not necessarily so, especially if you're remaining within your inner world rather than your outer world. There needs to be a link between the two, and that's why we do pray and pray out loud in the physical world. I encourage people to do both. Be willing to work, be willing to pray. You'll notice in the story there are three groups of workers. For the first group, of course, started at 6 a.m. Now, it's made clear that they discuss the work that's to be done. It's going to be done for 12 hours. They want something specific for a certain amount. They come to an agreement to get it, and they're willing to work hard until they get it. It's a hard and long way to demonstrate prosperity. Now, if you're going to do this, it's wise to do something that you really love to do so that you can bring your passion into what it is that you're doing. But there have been times I know in my life where I've had to do something I'm not particularly crazy about doing, but I do it because I know that by doing it, I'll get a certain amount of money, at the end of the week or at the end of the month. Now, there's a second group of workers. And these are the ones that were hired in midday, at 9 a.m., at noon, and 3 p.m. You'll notice that the landowner went out and said, why are you idle? And they said, well, we want to work. And he says, well, go ahead into the vineyards and I will pay you what is right. They don't come to a specific agreement as to what they're going to be paid and how long they're going to work. The landowner, though, in this divine idea of prosperity, you'll notice that the people are reacting to him in a more trusting way. And then there's the third group, hired at 5 p.m., 1 hour before the end of the day. He just goes out and says, go ahead and go work in the vineyards. He doesn't come to any specific promise of remuneration. It's just there. They're willing to go work. They said they're ready, willing, and able to serve. And that they're just willing. Well, let me give you, for example, if we're talking about work and prayer, there are times where we're willing to just work or to pray just for the heck of it, because we enjoy doing it. And that's what we start to realize, okay, there's the first way, work hard, make an agreement, Second way, okay, we're in general, we know that we're doing what it is we want to do. Then there's the third way where it just kind of seems to drop into our lap. If we're really honest with ourselves, this happens to all of us at some point during our lives. You know, there are times when you're kind of like, whoa, do I feel lucky? Then there are other times where you're like, oh boy, I really had to work hard for this. And sure, is it fair? Well, no, it's just kind of the way the world is. I mean, we all have those things come to us. And when we start to complain about it, it's really kind of ridiculous because that's just the way the world and prosperity works. So, we have an evolution of our openness to the divine idea of prosperity. And there are really only two ways that you can thwart having prosperity come into your life. And that, like I said, all sufficiency in all things. So that means our health, our occupation, our relationships, our spiritual growth, and yes, enough money to pay our bills. The first way you can thwart receiving your true prosperity is to believe that it's not possible. I noticed, especially here in the United States, in the 1980s, there started to be, this bill of goods that was sold to people that, that you need to work harder than you already are for the money that you're getting. And that not everybody deserves to get the amount of money that you need to end the day. For the previous decades, there was a sense that anyone who puts in a 40-hour work week should have enough for them to be able to pay all of their bills. And so, have you bought into that identity? Have you bought into that sense of that's the way the world is? If you're willing to shift your thinking and recognize that, no, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. I am willing and able to do what I need to do, to use my special gifts, passions, and talents to make this world a better place, and to trust that I'm going to be supplied. It will completely shift your experience of this world. Now, I said there were two ways that you can thwart your true prosperity. The other one is addressed by Jesus in verse 11, and that's that the workers started to grumble. When we express envy or resentment, that can thwart prosperity. Because in a sense, we're actually just kind of questioning what God is doing and how God is doing it. And of course, in unity, we believe that we are a part of God already. So there's no reason to feel like we're separated. Now, let me be clear. There's a difference between working for social justice and harboring an attitude of resentment or envy. Does that make sense? So, I'm going to have Duncan put up the slides. Let's kind of just piece together what it is we've talked about today. Prosperity is always available to us, and we can earn it by working for it, or we can earn it by praying for it, attracting it. Sometimes it comes easily, sometimes not so much. But if we're willing to just keep doing that and recognize that in each of our lives, yeah, there are going to be times where it comes so easily, and then there are other times where it doesn't seem to come as hard, but just trusting and knowing that God means it for good all of the time. Resentment or envy, don't go there. So regardless of our circumstances, the divine idea of prosperity will provide. We just open to it, we feel that flow of spiritual substance, divine substance that just kind of flows through us, through our imagination. We see and know what it is we want to demonstrate in our lives. And this divine substance is the underlying creative energy of the universe that creates all things, all molecules, all atoms. So yes, just acknowledge that prosperity exists. Acknowledge that, yes, you too can experience it. All kinds of inner prayers get answered, and all kinds of outer work gets rewarded. Everyone deserves an abundant supply. So does God play fair? Well, maybe not so much, but everything is in divine order. The proper sequence of events unfold because God is good all the time. Back on September 13th, Hurricane Florence hit the Carolinas. It was a slow-moving storm which dumped a lot of rain. And I want to share with you a story of a landowner who decided to do with what was his, what he preferred to do. It's another video from Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News.
For many people flooded out of their homes in and around Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the most welcoming port in the storm has been a total stranger.
I said, come stay with me. Come stay at my house until you can go back to yours.
It's not really a house, though.
It's a big 70-room house. It really is. At least that's how it's been lately.
Jarrett Hucks owns the Midtown Inn and Cottages, and throughout the flood, he has been open for business.
Jared Hucks, nice to meet you.
Or more like open for charity.
We'll take care of you.
To date, Jarrett has given away more than 1,000 free nights to this community's poorest and most vulnerable evacuees.
I don't know what we would have done, to be honest with you. I don't know where we would be right now.
There's so many other ways you want to say thank you.
There's no words to describe what it means to our family.
And Jarrett has taken in every member of these families. No pet policy be damned. The Midtown has welcomed dogs, a tortoise, even a rescued baby squirrel named Mr. Squeakers.
Love thy neighbor, right? That's what you're supposed to do.
I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, I've read it somewhere too. My mama taught me that a long time ago. All right, you're in. You need a room key, don't you?
So far, Jarrett has given away about $50,000 worth of goods and services. But even more important is the generosity he has inspired in others.
People started running to me right away. How can I help? What can I do?
They brought diapers, ice, and plenty of food. Anyone staying at the Midtown now gets 3 square meals a day. In fact, from the new shoes on their feet to the hairs on their head, we did not see a single need go unmet here.
You're being such a good boy.
Especially for the children, who now play wonderfully oblivious to the suffering that surrounds them. In an attempt to return the favor, some of the parents have been pitching in with housekeeping and other chores. Jarrett appreciates the effort, but he says the best repayment has been the crayon-on-paper thank yous, and the just knowing, with absolute certainty, that he has made his mama proud. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Our closing Bible verse is from the Gospel of Luke, 12th chapter, 29th verse. And Jesus said, "Do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be of anxious mind. For all the nations of the world seek these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things shall be yours as well. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace." Let's prepare for meditation.
You are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice of spirit on earth, and who you are and all you do is a blessing to the world, is a blessing to the world. We are the heart, we are the hands, we are the voice of spirit on earth, and who we are and all we do is a blessing to the world, is a blessing to the world, is a blessing to the world.
We are the hands, the heart, the voice of God. If you haven't already, just close your eyes and relax. Be still go within. Be willing to experience the presence of God that is always here, always in every cell of our bodies. In and around us, the presence of God is always here.